Not so good, I said. I'd interviewed with some companies on campus and nothing really looked promising. He said, so what are your plans when you get out of college? And I said, well, I'm going to go to Australia. Dad is literally speechless. He gets up and leaves the room. After all, he just got done paying for 5 years of college. And the best long-term goal I could come up with is Australia. Now, at this point, a parent has several ways to respond. Many of them involve an appendage applied to a child at a high rate of speed. Kick to the butt comes to mind. At the very least, a very vigorous discussion at high volume. Dad took none of these approaches. He could have just stomped on my dreams, but he didn't. He chose to apply massive doses of reality to the situation. How do you plan to pay for this, he said. I'll get a job. He says, do you need a visa to go to Australia? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, you have 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to find out if you need a visa. You have 2 weeks to find out if you have a job, or I don't want to hear any more about this. Well, he was good to his word. I got the job. I got the visa. And after working and saving every nickel I made for the better part of a year, I was able to begin my adventure. Oh, yeah.
Breathe, Chuck, breathe.
Right on.
Go, baby.
I owe it all to Dad. So now when you hear a story that begins, there I was in Pango, Pango. Jack Roberts is to blame. Now for a joke. A man's father dies, and he is a long way away, and he cannot come to make it to the funeral, but he wants his father to have the very best funeral possible. He contacts the funeral home that his father's body is at and tells them that he wants the very best for his father. Money is no object. The funeral home fulfills his request and sends him the bill. He pays the bill. And a month later, he gets another bill for $75. He pays that bill. And a month later, he gets another bill for $75, and he pays that bill, but he calls him up and says, hey, what's the deal with these monthly bills for $75? I thought I paid you guys in full. And the funeral director says, well, he says, you wanted the very best for your father. He says, I did, and the bill you sent me reflects that. I appreciate what you guys did. He says, well, when we went through your father's wardrobe, his clothes just really didn't seem up to what your wishes were, so we rented him a tuxedo. So now I'm going to hand over the mic to somebody else, and it's going to be like this is the talking stick that the Indians used to have. So if you guys want to talk, I propose that we form a line off here, and so you could get in line next, or as we used to do at Denison, you'd hold your beer over your head and say, me, I don't know. I know the next verse to the So who wants the mic next? There you go.
I'm actually going to talk about 2 other untold stories. I'm getting good at this. You see, if you can sort of make the stories that you tell stories in our stories, eventually you'll not have to do anything. But
What?
Yeah.
if you were paying attention to me, I told about the story that was
Right.
never be told.
The vodka story.
Yes, when Mom and Dad went swimming in vodka in a fountain in Russia. That's how I like to think about it. But the 2 other stories that I think are worth thinking about, although, as I said, there's really no story to tell, were, first Libby said that Dad flew 30 missions over Germany in World War II. He did. He flew his 30th mission on December 31st, 1944. Now, people normally have good parties on New Year's Eve every year. Imagine stepping off your 30th mission over Germany in the middle of World War II, knowing you were going home for more training and you'd done it and you'd made it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that was a hell of a New Year's Eve party. In an entirely innocent way, I'm sure. But we'll never know. And then the other story we'll never know about is that when Dad came back to the States, he was coming back to the States because he said he had volunteered for pilot training. Because he said they'd either train him to be a pilot or they'd send him out for 30 more missions over Germany. So he thought that being trained to be a pilot was a pretty good deal. So he came back to the States to be trained to be a pilot. And however things played out, he wound it, and so the history of World War II, for those of you who are too young, like everyone in this room, to remember, with notable exception, were that the war ended in Europe before it ended in Asia. And so there's a VE Day when there was victory in Europe, and there was a VJ Day when there was victory over Japan in the Pacific Theater. And Dad was in Los Angeles on VJ Day, which was probably going to be another good party. And he had orders to get on a train for a cross-country train trip from Los Angeles to, I don't know, Rochester, New York, or somewhere on the East Coast, to continue whatever his training was, but with certain knowledge that now that the war was over, it'd give him an opportunity to go home and not be trained at all, and stay in Los Angeles for the VJ Day party. And dutiful man that he was, he got on the train, heading out cross country. I'm reasonably confident that train had a bar car. So I'm, again, pretty sure that there was a great party that night, the story of which will never be told. But I cling to those two ideas of sort of Dad doing his duty and then having an opportunity to celebrate what he did for his country and for ultimately all of us. And we'll never know, or at least we won't know for a while yet until we catch up with him up there and he can tell us then. But it's my every intention to ask him when we get there. So who wants the talking stick next?
Me.
Yeah. Go
The talking
back.
stick will come to you, guys. The talking stick will come to you.
Wherever you want. So who are you? You're Jack's sister.
Oh, yeah. As the oldest living Roberts, by golly.
Amen.
I thought I'd never say it. Think of me as the Queen Mother.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Elizabeth. Yes, I could wear a funny hat and really look like the Queen, but we're only 2 months apart, the Queen and I. So. Anyway, during the service, I was thinking, oh, Mr. Clever Mark Twain, I was kind of wishing Jack would be looking up in the balcony. I mean, you hate to miss the funeral when you hear so many nice things about you, and so maybe he was up there, I don't know. But Tom Sawyer at heart, I guess he was. Okay, I'm going to just, you said only one story, but mine are quick.
Yeah, you get as many as you want.
Jack and I wish we'd done more together. Actually, we went to different schools, different camps, different everything. So we didn't really have a lot of common stuff going. But it seemed to me my memory of Jenkintown was we were always getting out of town, or out of Dodge, as the case may be. Because he went to school, someplace, and I went, and we were just never there. But Clever Jack, he noted the lady around the corner, and Navdini, but actually, I don't even feel it's my hometown, and I don't think he does either, particularly. So, you people are so lucky. Jack and I don't have one first cousin. None. My mother was an only child, and my father had one sister who had no children. So you can imagine how boring Christmas and holidays were. These two stayed Quaker, aunt and uncle, and Jack and then my parents. So I really just was bored stiff all my life. So on holiday. So anyway, I think that's one reason Jack and I loved it. We had a bunch of kids, and then often we would be at my mother's or someplace, and madness, finally 9 kids running around, my father sleeping on the floor and everything. And so one of the things, Mother fixed up the basement with the little play stuff for the younger kids. And she had all those dress bags hanging up, and George and Pete used to hide, and she'd be chasing them, mad as hell, you know, through the little thing. Kids, you know. So, but we really had a great time. And maybe that's why Jack and I ended up, or is it just coincidence, both raising our family in small towns where they all walked to the same school and had the same friends. And I don't know, at least I wish, it sounds good.
Worked out for my dad.
Okay, now, just skip a few years. We were living in a log cabin. Did I tell you I married Daniel Boone? And, we were near Harrisburg. So Dean and Jack would stop sometimes on their way to Jenkintown. And I know you had John and Paul, and I think Chuck was in the high chair. Well, anyway, it was pretty good weather. And the kids were playing, and John got stung by a bee. And you went, oh, this is terrible, you know. And after a while, he started to get hives. And, you know, we were worried. And at the same time, Paul had a sore throat. And Deanie, I think to be nice to John, he said, I think they both should go to the hospital. So after we got the kids, the younger kids to bed, remember, we went to the Harrisburg Hospital. Our family doctor was a good friend of Jose's, and in those days you could, I guess, make a date. So both these boys were in the hospital that night. But when our son Mark woke up the next morning, who'd been sharing a, you know, he said, Mother, the boys have disappeared. I think they were just there once, you know, overnight, and then you went on. Did you remember that, John? You got hives, you know, and it can be dangerous, I know.
Kept them out of the army.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Tecumseh, Chuck did. Well, of course, Jack went there, and I think all four of you boys went there, and our son Mark went there. And Mark and Paul were in the same tent. I'm sure that was arranged. Mark used to say that your counselor at rest time or whatever they did would ask questions to the boys, and whoever got the answer got a piece of candy. Do you remember that? No. So of course I said, who got the most answers? And he said, who the hell do you think? Paul. So much for Paul. Incidentally, Mark is just so disappointed he can't be here. That's another complication. But luckily, Chuck is going to come up to the gun, Jose and Mark's fishing. Jose owns a tenth of a fishing lodge. So he's entertaining all of us. We're going to go up on Monday, family, and Chuck's coming, I think, Thursday? Wednesday, good.
Right.
So Chuck's the one fisherman, I guess, in your family, the real fisherman.
Oh, right here.
Okay. Now, both our girls were married within a couple months, a year of each other, they were close. And we had, it was Lily's wedding, I guess, yeah. Now we were not in a log cabin, but an old stone place that had no central heating. And I cooked on a wood stove for 11 years. And I was sort of showing off to John. The whole family came back after the reception, and we're there at this nice old place. So I was kind of showing off to John. I said, now look, see, this is a wood stove, and you put the wood in here, and it heats it over there. And I said, see, I made 50 stuffed peppers for the party. And he went, uh-oh, Heartburn City. Way
to go, John.
Yeah. So that became the battle cry. Whenever my kids didn't like something, uh-oh, heartburn. Thank you.
Good job, Dad.
So anyway, finally, you know, the kids all grew, and Deanie and Jack and I and Jose were empty nesters, and we did take 2 wonderful trips with Jack and Dean. We did a hiking trip in Spain in '89. I think that was when we first started having hip problems. And so that one was fun. And then we went to Italy a couple years later, or several, and that was a sophisticated one. And we had a great time. So I think we saw more of each other then. You know, you get so busy when you're raising your family, and we were never in the same town or anything, it just seemed too bad. So, we ended up traveling, and now we all are in retirement homes, and I know you think so, and so do I. It's the nicest thing you can do for your children.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And
I agree.
we both like it, and it's so nice to be here.
Yay.
Hooray, Betty!